Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Excellent intro. Once again, my name is Kevin. I'm a developer evangelist for an outfit called Twilio. If you don't know what Twilio is, we're an API company that lets you send text messages, make phone calls, and do lots of fun stuff in that vein. Also, one thing I am going to throw out there, we're currently working with an excellent organization called Doctors Without Borders to help them with some very specific technology needs that they have around their relief efforts in the Philippines. We're pretty good on development resources right now, but I sense that perhaps we might need a little bit of help. So if you are a Node.js developer and you feel like you might be able to help us out on this project, please send me an email to kw@twilio.com, and we'll engage you if we need those resources. So I would really appreciate it if you would do that. But we're not here to talk about those sorts of things specifically here today. We're here today to talk about how you can run JavaScript on iOS 7. And to do that, we're going to talk about how you've been able to do JavaScript in the past in mobile applications for iOS. And then we'll also look at some of the new technology advancements that Apple has made available to make it a little bit easier to write native applications in JavaScript for iOS 7 specifically. Now, in Vancouver, I'm sure I don't have to tell people about a little technology called Phonegap. Phonegap, yes, indeed. So Phonegap actually sort of begat this new open source project which is being managed through the Apache Foundation called Cordova. And again, you probably know that Cordova is a technology which allows you to take an HTML web page, basically wrap that up, repackage it, and then distribute it as a native application. And then kind of in addition to that, you can use the Cordova plugin system to actually expose native functionality from the underlying platform to your JavaScript code that is running in the context of a web view. And there are lots of sort of technologies out there that have done this. They either use Cordova, embed Cordova, or reinvent Cordova in some better way. And so you can't really swing a dead cat these days without hitting a new hybrid web development framework of some kind. But I actually I worked for a company called Accelerator for a number of years, and we actually created this product called Titanium. And Titanium, in the very early days, looked very similar to Phonegap. We had an embedded web view, and we exposed native APIs to JavaScript within the context of the web view. And that was working out pretty well. But one of the things that we started to try to do was to allow you to actually do native user interface over the top of the web view, so you could actually have native user interface components that were driven by JavaScript. So we implemented some kind of crazy stuff where we would associate, UI buttons or UI views with DOM elements in the, in the browser, and we would actually animate the UI button up and down, like when the web view would scroll. And obviously, it was total crap. Like it didn't work very well at all. So what we ultimately did was we took JavaScript Core, which is the JavaScript engine used by Mobile Safari and WebKit, and we customized it such that you could actually embed it within an iOS application and run JavaScript code that would actually call directly against native APIs for user interface and that sort of thing. And sort of the core technology that drove this was called Kroll. And Kroll is sort of the metallurgical process by which Titanium is created. But it was also the technology which allowed us to have objects which existed both in native code in Objective-C and also in the virtual machine of JavaScript. So this was the bridge layer which sort of allowed Titanium to do the types of things that it could do, and is still sort of the foundational technology for that platform today. But then WWDC rolled around, and I was actually fortunate enough to have been there, and I was looking through the sessions, and I saw that there was this write JavaScript for native iOS 7 applications. And I had kind of heard through the grapevine on like the WebKit mailing lists and what have you that this was a possibility. But I was pretty stoked to see that there was an actual session showing how you could use JavaScript on iOS 7. So I checked it out, and sure enough, basically Apple has made available that very sort of a version of that customized version of JavaScript core that we had to create for Titanium, and actually made that available as a system framework in iOS 7. So it was actually surprising because of this guy who ran Apple for a number of years. I forget his name. He released a lot of really great products. But he didn't have actually very nice things to say about technologies that separated the developer from his perfect world of Objective-C and the frameworks thereto pertaining. But actually, right now it appears that Apple has given the clear go-ahead for JavaScript as a first-class citizen on iOS 7. So for the moment, there seems to be peace in the valley, and we can all happily write JavaScript for iOS 7. Yes, heartwarming, yes, indeed. OK, so I'm actually not going to do a lot of the slide thing. I'm actually going to show you how you actually pull this technology into an Xcode project and use it to run JavaScript on iOS 7. And I'm going to show you some tooling that I've created to make this a little bit easier and make the workflow a little bit more palatable. But for starters, let's just show a very simple example. So we'll go ahead and create a new Xcode project. And we will create a new single view application. We'll just call it JS demo or something along those lines. And we'll throw that in my home directory because desktop already has one of those. OK, so if I want to create an Xcode project which uses JavaScript core, the first thing I'm going to need to do is to actually link against the JavaScript core framework. So I'm going to go down here and type in JavaScript core. All right. Also, are there any Objective-C developers in the house? So there are a few. Who in here hates the very thought of Objective-C? So quite a few people. All right, so we'll skip most of that stuff, but I'll show you just enough to understand how you can get our precious JavaScript into this environment. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in that framework. Here in the app delegate, this is basically the jumping off point for our application. So I'm going to show you how we can actually do some JavaScript magic in this project. So the first thing that we need to do is we'll go ahead and import the JavaScript core framework. And then before we start evaluating JavaScript code, let's create some JavaScript code right now. So ns string. And we'll just create some simple JavaScript code that we want to execute in this application. We'll start off with 2 + 2. Now, if I want to evaluate this JavaScript code, first thing I'm going to need is a JS context. And the JS context is sort of similar to the JavaScript context that you get in your sort of single thread in the browser. So we'll just call that context. Then we will alloc and init that guy. So again, this is probably turning the stomachs of you JavaScript developers out there. So I apologize for that. But basically, if I want to evaluate that JavaScript code, I'm going to take my JavaScript context, and I'm going to evaluate that code. And what I get back from evaluating that code is a JS value. So let's grab a JS value. That's going to be the result. That's going to be from context, evaluate script, pull in the code there. And then we'll just log out to the console. Result was something along those lines. Then we'll log out that result. All right, so we have our JavaScript code. We create a JS context in which to run it. And then we evaluate that script in that JavaScript context, and then we're going to log that out to the console. So we'll start with that. The two things that I'm going to show is basically how we go from Objective-C into JavaScript, and evaluating a script is one of those ways. And then I'll show how we can go from JavaScript into the land of Objective-C. So if we go back out here to the console, we see the result was 4. And that's good to see because JavaScript is a little flaky on the math sometimes, but it can get 2 + 2 right, which is pretty awesome. OK, so that's one way that I can sort of go into JavaScript. I can evaluate a script in the context, in a JavaScript context. The other thing that I can do is I can actually invoke functions in JavaScript from native code. So let's create a function. We'll call it add stuff or something along those lines. And it'll take an argument, and it'll just add 2 to that. So I'm just going to return n + 2. OK, great. So I have a function defined in JavaScript. I'm going to evaluate that script. I don't need to capture the result this time. But now I want to, from the land of Objective-C, call that add stuff function. So the way that I do that is by using my JavaScript context. And I can use this notation to actually grab a handle to that function. So here is my JavaScript function, which I can now call. So I can say func.call with arguments. and then I pass in an array of arguments for that function. In this case, I'm going to create a new ns number with int. We'll make it 3 this time. All right, so I'm going to call that function, and then I'm actually going to log that out to the console. So if I run that again, you can see the result was 5. So those are the two basic ways where I go from native code to JavaScript. I can either evaluate a script, or I can actually call a function directly that's been defined in that JavaScript context. Now if I want to come from JavaScript to native code, the way that I can do that is by basically making a block of Objective-C code callable from a JavaScript program. So let's change my JavaScript to say do native stuff, something along those lines. And then we're going to, before we actually evaluate that script, we're going to create a Objective-C block, which is going to be callable from JavaScript. And the way that we do that is, again, just by creating a block, which we'll call do native stuff. And by the way, if you're not an Objective-C programmer, block syntax is going to throw you off a lot. I'll just put that out there right now. There's probably like 4 or 5 different ways to declare a block in Objective-C or to work with blocks. So that was something that was a little tricky for me. So just keep that in mind. So here I'm just going to log hello world out to the console. And then I will go ahead. I can nuke all the rest of this stuff. So here's my JavaScript code, which is going to call the do native stuff function. Here's where I actually define that function in Objective-C code, and then I'm going to evaluate that code. So let's go ahead and run that. And out here in the console, once again, we have hello world. So what I'm hoping to impress upon you is that this is not rocket science, not in the slightest. If you're willing to sort of delve in and look at the documentation for Objective-C frameworks, you will very easily be able to expose those pieces of functionality to JavaScript code. In addition to this simple block syntax, you can actually also expose Objective-C classes to JavaScript. So you can actually create new instances of them. You can declare, instance level functions, which will be usable from JavaScript. That's using a API called JS export, which I won't actually code for you right now in the interest of time. But that actually ends up being a really useful thing for more complicated programs that use the JavaScript core framework, like the one that we're about to see. So as I said, I was super excited when I saw this. When I saw this technology was going to be available at WWDC. But as I started to work with it, obviously this interface in Xcode is not super awesome to work with as a developer. So I thought to myself, well, how could I make this productive? Like, what would make sense to actually write real JavaScript code that makes use of this technology? So I decided that I wanted it to kind of look like a node.js program. I wanted to use NPM as a package manager, and I wanted to use the CommonJS module system that's available in Node. So I got to thinking, well, how can I enable this and sort of ship that to an iOS device? So it turns out there's this technology, Browserify, which I'm sure many of you use in your projects. Browserify is intended to basically create a single JavaScript file which uses Node.js's common or module loading system, and basically allow you to run a Node-style program in the browser. But really what it is, it's a sort of portable Node.js environment. It's basically a way to create a single JavaScript file which contains a self-contained Node module loading system. So basically what I did is I used Browserify to package up a Node.js program, and basically I can ship that entire bundle to Xcode and run that program and evaluate it in a JavaScript context. So that's what I ended up doing. And there's another project on my GitHub repository, which I won't show you, that sort of also uses sockets to sort of live reload code from your local machine. But in this case, I'm just going to use Browserify and another utility called Watchify, which basically runs Browserify anytime a file changes in your program. And the one thing that I'm going to show you is how you can actually script like a Sprite Kit 2D game from JavaScript using this technology. So Sprite Kit, for those of you who don't know it, it was also announced at WWDC. It's a 2D game framework that Apple has made available. I actually really like it because the object model is super easy to grok. You have scenes, which are containers of stuff, and you have nodes, which are the things within the scene. And then you can add physics and actions to those nodes. And it's a really easy game framework to get started with if you've never done anything in that vein before. So what I will do now is I'll quit out of that. And if I go out to my terminal here, I'm going to use this command, watchify. It's just npm install watchify. Basically, I'm going to use that to browserify and bundle up a node program, and then I'm going to copy that to the actual bundle for my iOS application. So I'm going to get that started, so it'll pick up any changes as I go along my way. Let's get this guy out of the way here. I won't go too far into this. But this is the basically the native bindings, which will allow my JavaScript code to create a Sprite Kit game and do some interesting things with Sprite Kit. So here, I'm going to write a node program, which is going to start by requiring the Sprite Kit module. And we'll create a scene. That's just going to be new sk.scene. We'll give that a background color of red. We obviously like red pretty well, Twilio. So we'll say sk.present scene. And if we run that out here in Xcode, that should just give us a basic Sprite Kit scene, which will show us the number of nodes that have currently been added and the current frames per second at which the game is running. Now, I mentioned before, the way that we sort of present content in a scene is by creating nodes. So let's create a new label node. Just say, "That's awesome game." And then to that, we'll pass in, let's say, an x of around 160, whoops, y40. 32, and then the always classy chalk duster for our font as well, and then we'll add that to the scene. Oops. Add that to the scene there. And once again, we run that. We should just see a little label node which is added. It's kind of too big for the scene, but that's fine. So that's pretty awesome. So the one thing that most game frameworks do is they run on an event loop. So I basically wrote this native framework for Sprite Kit to every time every time the event loop runs, it's going to be capturing native events that have happened through touch interactions. It's basically going to be flushing all those events out to the JavaScript context so JavaScript can take care of those. So that's an implementation detail, but how it looks to the developer is we just say scene on touch. Here I'm going to have a function that's called. And now let's actually create a ship. And that's going to be a Sprite node. And Sprite Kit through Xcode actually has a lot of great tools to work with sprite sheets and create create lots of really great art assets. But this spaceship refers to just a ping file, which is in the application bundle. So let's give this a height of 50 with 50. And then for the x, that's going to be just the location within the scene that was touched by the user. And then we will add it to the scene. So we'll say scene.add ship. Bam. Run that through Xcode. And now we can kind of stamp out as many little spaceships as we want in our scene. So again, still not super exciting. Let's go ahead and add some physics to the scene. So we can let's just say ship.addPhysics, which by default will just add a circular physics shape to be associated with my ship. So now when I go out and run that, now I'm going to have ships. Oh my God, it's pandemonium. They're just dropping through the floor. So because by default, the gravity is pulling down in the scene. But let's also add a physics body to that label. So we'll just say add physics. And for a label, I defaulted to a rectangular region for that. So now when we go ahead and run that, we're just going to have all those like sort of pile up on one another there. So what I think is really exciting about this technology is that I've written 27 lines of JavaScript, and I've already started to unlock a lot of the previously hidden potential and hidden functionality of iOS 7 and made it available as a node.js module, which people can use right now. So what I really hope people will do is sort of take this technology and even if you're sort of new to Objective-C and think it's scary and gross or whatever, it is scary and gross, don't get me wrong. But you should check it out. There's a lot of amazing stuff that you can do. Here are some resources. My SlideShare link will be coming up here next. But right now, the documentation for the JavaScript core framework is not super awesome in that it doesn't exist. So what you'll need to do is actually look at the header files for JavaScript core. And the way that you do that is in Xcode, you'll actually hold down the command button and click on all the different header files for the JavaScript core framework. And thankfully, the header files are actually pretty extensively commented, so you will be able to make pretty good progress there. Also, you might want to check out the Node Sprite Kit module that I was using in the demo, and Node Sprite Kit, that's the Xcode project that I was running the game through as well. And then also the session video from WWDC, which introduced JS Core, is available on the WWDC 2013 video and slide page, which you can check out there. And this slide deck with all those links is on slideshare.net/kwhinnery. And you can hit me up with any questions, and I'll obviously be hanging out here. Thank you very much. It's super fun. I hope you guys hack around with it as well.